Now.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Workplace Strikes Back. You can tell that people of a certain generation came up with that title, i.e. me, feeling very Star Warsy that day. So thanks for joining us. And the reason behind this is, it's thinking, well, so many changes have gone on within the property market, within the technology, and just managing people. So we thought what we'll do, we'll just bring together a few experts, no pressure there for people who want to talk next, experts in their field to share their thoughts on some of those developments that have happened over the last few months. So most people know me, Steve Fitzsimons. I'm sitting here in the Chamber of Commerce. You might have seen the communication that I've taken over as Chief Exec following the sad passing of the last Chief Exec, Colin Daniels. And what that means is that there's an opportunity for the Business Exchange and the Chamber to work more closely together. So we've invited Chamber members for this event. So if we do have any Chamber members on here, welcome. Because that's what the Business Exchange has been really good at, of course, over the last couple of years, having events. And the fact that many of you attend the weekly call that Jackie puts together is fantastic, because it's just it's been so difficult for networking organisations to get together. Yes, we can't wait until we have face-to-face interaction again, but this is probably the best that we'll get in the meantime. But roll on, vaccinations next year. So yeah, this event today, another opportunity to share best practice, to see each other, to poke fun at Simon's moustache, and to have other bits of witty repertoire. So really appreciate you being here. Jackie's taking care of the technology because I don't really understand it. I am going to take any questions. As you know, we're on Zoom, so Zoom etiquette. I'm guessing probably the best thing for the speakers is if you send any questions on the chat, and then Jackie, are you okay to read some of those out if they come through?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, if anybody does want to, is brave enough to ask that question when the presentation is finished, if they want to put their hand up, and then we'll take that. Otherwise, I'll just make up some questions myself. So, without further ado, we're going to pass on to the first speaker, which is Simon Roddam. Now, just to put this into context, despite his boyish good looks, Simon has been around in the property market for a long time, really knows his onions when it comes to buildings, particularly in Warrington. We use BE Group every year because we have the annual property review, which again, during normal times, we get about 200 people face to face, and BE Group put together the property review. And it's this year was the 22nd time we've done it, albeit virtually. So Simon's not going to talk about all property, it's going to be specifically on the office environment, but we just thought it'd be really appropriate just to catch up, because we know that, I apologise, Simon, if it's in your presentation, the likes of Deloitte, for example, in Liverpool recently, they announced that they are closing that office, so they will then have satellite and remote working and various options like that. So I think, to put it into context, really important for Simon to give us some of his observations over the last few months. So Simon, over to you. You've got your own presentation, haven't you?
That's right, yeah. So good morning, everyone, and apologies for my really dodgy Movember tash, but I am partaking in the Movember charity fundraiser this month. So yeah, counting down the days till I can take this off my face. But yeah, so for those of you, you may or may not be familiar with BE Group. I'm one of the directors there and head of commercial agency. We're a commercial property focused property consultancy, specialising in economic development and regeneration, town planning, commercial agency and valuation. We're based in Birchwood in Warrington, and we've been operating locally for over 30 years now. So today I'll be providing you with an overview specifically on the Warrington office market, with a snapshot on current performance as we enter the final quarter in what's been a challenging year for everyone. So I'm just going to bring up some slides and I'll try and share my screen with you. So this is BE Group. So we're a small business operating from Birchwood, as I say. There's 10 of us, and there's us all smiling in the sunshine together before socially distancing came in. Okay, so the main office areas in Warrington, really just to give you a little bit of education on where the vast majority of office stock is in Warrington. There are 4 key locations which provide the majority of office supply. And although there are clearly smaller developments in Warrington, these are the four main areas. So on the top right of your screen there, Birchwood, that actually offers half of the total office stock, incorporating business parks, Dayton Park, Birchwood Boulevard, Birchwood Park, Birchwood One, the Beacons, the Links. The list goes on. There's quite a number of business parks that make up the Birchwood office park area, and as I say, that's half of total office supply in that particular location. Gemini, Westbrook, located just a couple of junctions west of Birchwood on the M62, which includes business parks, Europa Boulevard, Webster Courts, Lingley Mere, and then we've got Warrington Town Centre, incorporating accommodation in the heart of the town centre, and also Centre Park, which is the Warrington's town centre business park, if you like, which provides approximately 370,000 square feet of office accommodation there. And Wilderspool Business Park, so Wilderspool being just south of the town centre of Warrington, was redeveloped effectively by Bruntwood, but is effectively the original Greenall's brewery site, which now is a very major office park in the Warrington office market. So that just gives you a bit of an overview on where office space is. So looking at availability, as where we are at the minute, the Warrington office market consists of approximately 5.5 million square feet of office accommodation. As mentioned, the bulk of it is actually in Birchwood. There's 2.7 million square feet of space in Birchwood, and the rest is located across Warrington, but predominantly on those motorway corridor business parks, as well as the town centre. So we've estimated that there's in the region of about 9.3% of total stock vacant at present. So that's space that's on the market and available. So that equates to 513,000 square feet of vacant stock. So Warrington, it has it's consistently delivered between 250. It's not coming from me.
It's all
Okay.
sorted.
Oh, good. I was wondering where the fire engines were coming from. So yeah, I'll carry on from where I was at. So I'm just mentioning the Warrington office market. It's consistently delivered from 250 to 300,000 square feet of office deals year on year for quite some time. And this may appear to indicate that there's approximately 2 years worth of office supply given the current availability. But actually, Warrington delivers in the region of about 65% of its own deals from existing occupiers relocating within the borough. So that gives the Warrington office market quite a robust, insular market. Occupiers relocate within the borough. So, there are certain size mixes that are in shorter supply now, but hopefully, that'll lead to some new development in the near future, we hope. So at the end of the third quarter of this year, we did a roundup of take-up. And effectively, Warrington had actually reached 259,850 square feet of take-up. So you're probably wondering, how that can happen during the COVID pandemic. Obviously, everyone's been asked to work from home. There's a lot of offices in Warrington underutilised, some still at this point very much underutilised. But there's been this trade of office space that's actually continued to follow through. There's two sides to the story really this year. So the number of transactions so the number of deals that's actually happened this year so far, it's actually down by 59%. So that's the number of deals down by 59%, which in our view is due to largely the small to medium-sized office occupiers sitting tight to consider their long-term strategies for their workplace. So whilst there's a reduction of smaller office requirements in the market, or whilst there has been up to now, bigger office transactions to lesser affected business operations have concluded. In fact, there's been 5 transactions in excess of 10,000 square feet, providing a total of 175,000 square feet of office take-up this year. And a number of these deals were already in the pipeline before the COVID pandemic. So fortunately for Warrington, and this has really sort of saved the year really in terms of take-up, is the fact that there was already a pipeline of big deals that were coming through, and they haven't, fortunately, not been knocked off course. So the bigger deals have happened, and that's really bolstered the take-up for this year to where we are. So looking at these charts here, we've done a few comparisons on size mix, on leasehold versus freehold, and rental values. So there's been 35 deals done up to Q3. So hopefully we'll squeeze a few more in over the next month or so. And of the 35 transactions, 29 were leasehold deals, 5 were freehold deals. Generally speaking, leasehold deals tend to make up around about 80% of total take-up each year, and this is a characteristic that's obviously still present this year. The average size deal, so this has gone up. Clearly, there's not been, there's been some big deals happened and some bigger chunks of space, so the average size deal's gone up. Usually it sits in the region of about 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, but it's sitting at around about 7,000 square feet at the minute because of the bigger deals that have been done. I don't think that really characterises the sort of size mixes that are popular, but just does show that there's been a bit of a shift because of the bigger deals that have happened this year. As I mentioned, 5 deals were done in excess of 10,000 square feet, showing that there's still a good level of demand for some of these larger entities that are in the market. So looking at rental values, headline office rents in Warrington have recently reached £22 a square foot for high spec grade A offices at Birchwood Park, but the vast majority of stock, which is refurbished stock, effectively, the rents tend to range from £13.50 to £17 a square foot on the business parks. Lower spec accommodation in the town centre. Obviously, there's lots of Edwardian, Victorian terraces in the town centre of Warrington, and some older buildings that have been reinvented, if you like, and repositioned in the market. So rents in the town centre fluctuate from top 10 to £12 per square foot, just to give you a bit of a benchmark there. And as you see from the charts, there's been a lot of the smaller deals that have happened have actually been in the lower rental tiers. So just showing that smaller occupiers have been a little bit more cost conscious, really, I think, on their office selections this year. Freehold values, they are firming up. There's not a lot of stock that can be purchased in Warrington. It's a really strong leasehold market. Clearly, 80% of deals each year are leasehold deals. So people like to hold on to buildings if they're investors. They'll hold on to them and take the income rather than sell them. But there still is a churn of freehold deals. Top end of the market, £168 a square foot was the sort of top end of the freehold office market, but should be noted there's a lot of deals done at lower levels where developers and occupiers have bought unrefurbished stock. This is I find this the really interesting slide. So this is a chart of the office take-up comparing Warrington to those neighbouring markets. Salford Quays and Trafford, that's very much tracked as an individual office market itself. South Manchester, quite a number of business parks around the South Manchester area, Manchester City Centre, Liverpool City Centre, and the out of town business parks in Liverpool as well. So as you can see from here, Warrington's just shy of 260,000 square feet at the end of Q3, and only really being beaten at this point in terms of take up by Manchester City Centre. I guess city centre markets, they have been affected significantly, heavily accessed by public transport, and there's been a real reluctance for people wanting to actually go and go travel to work via public transport, which is understandable. And Manchester's been hit quite hard in that regard. And but yeah, in the first quarter of the year, Manchester City Centre actually transacted over 300,000 square feet of office space, and usually that's quite the norm for Manchester. Usually trades around about 300,000 square feet or thereabouts each quarter. So you can see that over the last couple of quarters, whilst we've been struck by the COVID pandemic, Manchester City Centre hasn't actually traded that much either. So Warrington's, it's fared really well. It showed its resilience, and I think a lot of that does come down to the fact that there's a lot of office stock that's positioned on the motorway corridors, very accessible via car, lots of good parking facilities for people to drive to, and it is, whilst it is encouraged that people can cycle and walk and take shorter journeys to work without the car, it still very much is seen and used as a drive-to location. And I think there's been a bit of a confidence there that people can, the smaller buildings and people can, manage their own buildings and control their own destiny with regards to the guidelines that have been required to follow with regards to COVID. So we've seen occupiers, particularly smaller occupiers, utilising their offices quite well since coming out of the first lockdown. I think in the summer we started to see the car parks filling up and people comfortable to actually go to work and find it's a safe place to be. And I think that's really helped the market this year. I think it's that drive to and having lesser sort of shared elements, much in contrast to city centres where you've got the big high-rise multi-occupied buildings and that heavy reliance on public transport. So Warrington has actually performed well from an office perspective, and obviously it's nice to see that we are outperforming the neighbouring markets, albeit we don't like to see any of them suffering during this period. We want to see everyone back on the feet as soon as possible. So I'm just trying to sort of summarise the notable deals really. There's been 35 transactions to the end of Q3 in Warrington, but the notable deals are the 6 that are highlighted on the screen here. These are the occupiers. So Warrington Borough Council, big transaction in regards to Warrington Borough Council relocating their headquarters to Times Square. Times Square being the £142 million town centre development, which houses not only now Warrington Borough Council's headquarters, but you've got a Cineworld there, you've got the new permanent market hall, as well as some nice retail and restaurant offers coming down the line as well. So that's a real boost for the market, and I think shows Warrington Borough Council's drive to assist the regeneration of the town centre and the resurgence of good office stock as well in the town centre. So they took their 80,000 square foot HQ building in Warrington town centre. Flexera Software, we have seen quite a lot of IT related businesses, software companies, IT support companies confidently coming to market to take more space because they've been doing quite well through this period. Flexera Software, great win for Warrington. They've come over from their office in Runcorn and taken 16,000 square feet at Birchwood Park in 401 Faraday Street. So that was a really good transaction to happen, and that very much did sort of stem from this year. It wasn't follow through from last year. It was a new occupier coming to the market this year and choosing Birchwood as its location. Skin City, it's an online skincare business. So they are doing very well through the lockdown. They were already growing as a business. And again, you know, they've decided to expand and stay in the Warrington borough, which is great. They took 10,000 square feet at Centre Park. The NHS, the Warrington Clinical Commissioning Group, they took a building on Centre Park as well, neighbouring Skin City. That was an 11,000 square foot deal. Hoover Candy, obviously a big brand. They took space and have subsequently expanded and taken an extra 7,200 square feet at Bridgewater Place on Birchwood Park. So obviously Birchwood Park doing quite well with some of these bigger occupiers. So they've created, I understand, a new showroom facility there to accompany their offices. But yeah, I guess BT is one of the more notable deals out of the lot. You know, this is a 55,000 square foot office deal that's happened, you know, in the summer, and effectively BT, they're already in the Gemini area on the west, so they're effectively relocating themselves to Birchwood and recommitting themselves to the area, which I think just really demonstrates a real confidence from some of these big occupiers to show that, you know, there's the right sort of accommodation available in Warrington, and it's a really good catchment for employment and the right kind of people. So BT, you know, taking 55,000 square feet has really bolstered the figures. So a bit of a summary for you. I'm a real office nerd, so I'd love to chat to you about offices for much longer, but I'll try and just summarise it for you now. So office availability, we've got 500,000 square feet of office stock. Sounds like a lot. It really isn't. We've got a very consistent office market, and it seems to be churning quite well. I think with the COVID pandemic slowing down the smaller occupiers, I think we'll see hopefully a bit of a rebound, you know, towards the start of next year, hopefully from them. And a lot of that availability, I think, will actually dwindle. People are always looking to progressively move to better quality space, and I think you know, we'll start to see some of those occupiers, you know, really taking up some of that availability. But equally, I guess from our perspective as an agency, we are seeing a lot of requirements from occupiers looking to save costs, save on desk space, and you know, they're picking the phone up to us with their requirements and basically, you know, taking, you know, in some cases half the amount of space that they currently reside in. But there's a real shift around it, just depending on the sectors and who's sort of affected more than others. But you know, the good thing is, you know, people want to, you know, stay in Warrington. People are consolidating as well. People that have got multiple offices, so in Manchester, Liverpool, Chester, and they're looking at Warrington as a good place to consolidate and try and save on overheads as well. And hopefully we'll see a bit of a drive as well from city centre occupiers, perhaps looking at positively at business parks, you know, as we go into next year and longer term strategies are implemented. So take up, obviously, it's almost at 260,000 square feet at this point, which is great. Notable deals, obviously, with the BT one and prime rents there, obviously at £22 a square foot at the top end of the spectrum, but very much, you know, there's a healthy supply and providing, you know, a real good size a really good price range for occupiers to sort of find what they're looking for. That's the end of my sort of run through of a snapshot of the office market. It is, I guess, I have put a bit of a positive spin on it because I think you've got to look at the positives. Take up is actually a good level despite the pandemic, but you know, the number of transactions is down, but we are, you know, optimistic. We're starting to sort of see occupiers, smaller occupiers, coming back to market now and starting to review their requirements, and you know, hopefully that, you know, the business parks, the fact that we have you know, got these smaller buildings that are well accessed from the motorways as well, you know, we'll start to see that side of the market come back, and things sort of charge on in Warrington. But yeah, it could have been a lot worse. I think that's probably the headline. It's going quite well for Warrington, so I'm pleased to report that to everyone. And I will try to unshare my screen now.
Simon, thanks for that.
Not a problem.
Jackie, I'm not sure if there's any questions. If you just indulge me for a second, because I'm going to ask one of my questions. We had the Centre for Cities came in to see the council several months ago before all this kicked off, and they showed a very interesting diagram which showed the office space within town and city centres, because Warrington's classed as being a city in that respect. Warrington's got a very low share of offices in the town centre. So we've got the base, which is probably nearest, and then after that it would be Centre Park. So my question is, during normal times, whatever normal is, would you be encouraging, maybe that's a bit too strong because it puts you on the spot, Simon, would you like to see, is there appetite for more offices in the town centre in Warrington, similar to, if you go to Liverpool, you go to Manchester, there are loads of offices in the city centre?
Yeah, we are actually seeing occupiers you know, coming to market, and they are looking at the town centre. There's some real, you know, development opportunities in the town centre. But I think what really drives the market, and I'm not saying there won't be any pre-lets in the town centre, you know, in the near future. I think there's opportunity for that. But I think what's driven other markets to do quite well is that delivery of product, and it being you know, speculatively delivered, and so occupiers can touch and feel, you know, what they're going to get, and it does stimulate the market. I think, you know, there are town centre occupiers that would have actually looked at space in the town centre, you know, that have gone to the business parks to try and find what they want. I guess a very good example of that would be Countryside, the residential developer. Big occupier for Warrington. They were in the market looking for a 20,000 square foot office last year, and they were at Centre Park, so town centre, if you like. Really, you know, happy in that location, but they needed more space. They couldn't get 20,000 square feet in the town centre of Warrington in the right quality that they wanted. You know, I mentioned in my presentation about occupiers wanting to progressively move to better quality space. You rarely find an occupier that's not moving to better quality space, and we've done multiple assessments of that, and it's a trend that's been there for a while. So, you know, Countryside, you know, they came to the market, the stock wasn't available, they went to Birchwood. It's great that they stayed in the borough. But I think, you know, had the product been there in the town centre at the time, you know, you would have seen a really significant office letting in the town centre of Warrington. But you know, you mentioned other cities and towns. There definitely is a drive, I think, from certain types of occupiers to want to go to those locations now, because, you know, they're trying to attract a certain type of employee. You know, they potentially younger employees. They want retail offer. They want a lot of leisure as well as just having an office. They want to be able to enjoy you know, a lot of those town centre and city centre amenities. The market, you know, there is an element of the market that's definitely looking for that, and I think that's a definite catalyst for Warrington to deliver some grade A, you know, space in the town centre of Warrington. And you know, we've done assessments on developments in you know, past years. You've got certain points in time, you know, looking back in time of when there were tranches of new development delivered in Warrington. You know, those years where it was delivered, you can see that, you know, shortly after there's a big spike in take up as well. So yeah, you know, I think there does need to come a point in time where, you know, you need to actually push the button and deliver some of that stock. The base, you mentioned the base, you know, great example there now. I know the you know, good occupational levels in there. It's a lovely building, and it'd be nice to see some of the stadium quarter, you know, built out for offices in due course, which I'm sure it will, as well as Times Square. You know, council have got a fantastic HQ there, and you know, you go and walk around Times Square now, and it's a totally different environment, isn't it, to what we're used to? And I think already, you know, Warrington are already delivering the right sort of developments in there now. So I think, you know, we will start to see more demand for the town centre off the back of what's being delivered.
Thanks, Simon. I'll tease everyone by saying that we do have an inquirer for Times Square, which isn't a retailer. It's not a normal office occupier, but it's somewhere in between, and that's all I can say. But that will bring some of that footfall in. Jackie, are you just going to highlight Jenny's question?
Yeah. Jenny Wilkie has asked, have you seen a shift in the way occupiers are using their space? Do you think companies are now embracing flexible, agile working in line with reducing the space they currently occupy?
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, I think as it stands, that a lot of occupiers now are, you know, they are set up to work remotely, and a lot weren't quite at that point. You know, at the initial lockdown, we were all forced very quickly into working from home, and the initial short-term strategy was just to get mobile, to, you know, make sure that the systems were put in place so that we could continue our business operations working from home, and there was no long-term strategy at that point from businesses to then change the way that they're working. But I think we are quite a way into this pandemic now, and people, you know, they've experienced working from home, and you know, some really enjoy that, and some have found that it's been very problematic. I think now it's clear to see that there is a balance, and I think there's a real positive balance, that people see the office now as a real hub, a place to go and collaborate with your colleagues, a sharing of ideas. It's a real think tank, somewhere to go and have a lot of offshoot conversations, and you know, team sort of gatherings where you can get together with your colleagues. And I don't think that'll ever be sort of, I think now that we've experienced life just working from home and doing the online video stuff, which is great, but I think, you know, the office definitely has its place, and occupiers have definitely seen that, but it has changed the way that they're working. We're seeing requirements reducing in size, quite a lot of them, where people don't need as much desk space, because their intention is that they'll probably have staff coming into the office 3 or 4 days a week, and the rest, you know, the time they might be flexing and working from home. And I guess the positive thing from that is that, you know, yeah, it will reduce overheads. You've still got an office environment that you can use, and it'll relieve pressure on the motorways and things like that. But we are seeing that people are more agile now, and workspaces are space planned and designed to be more agile workspaces. So you've not just got the desks in there now, You've got the informal seating areas, you've got the breakout areas, and the open meeting spaces as well as the private meeting spaces. So it's creating an environment that's suitable for all kinds of different ways of working. And occupiers seem to be going, it was already going in that direction, I think, before the pandemic, but you were getting the more techie businesses, and certainly city centre occupiers that were doing, these agile workspaces. But now we're starting to see it's quite the norm now for occupiers to be looking at doing that to cater for this flexible way of working. So that is what we are seeing. It's not not everybody's actually looking at it in that way, but quite a lot are, and I think it's the right thing to do. Why put everyone in the office from 9 to 5, 5 days a week, when there are certain aspects of the job that you can deliver, working from home or working from another office, from a coffee shop. There's so many places where you can work now, and I think occupiers are, businesses are aware of that, and their long-term strategies will start to see a bit more agile working.
I mean, you've set up our next presenter very well. Before I pass on, though, can I just encourage Sylvie from the base and Jane Erasmus from UBC to put any comments in the chat, just to share their experiences of office inquiries over the last few months. So yeah, you've teed up Cheryl, because getting the workplace secure and ready for people coming in is really important, because we all need to feel safe or safer when we get into the office. So Cheryl, now you work for NDA, so do you want to take over? Have you got any slides, Cheryl, for us? Or is Jackie sharing those?
No, sorry, I'm a bit of a last minute addition, so I've not got any slides.
That's exactly what we like. So you just crack on, that's absolutely
okay?
Fine. You're in good company.
Oh, sorry, Alexa's just talking to me. Let me just go and turn her off.
Okay. I'm guessing that's the gadget rather than just a little person who's sitting in the corner.
Yeah, my daughter's not called Alexa. Yeah. No, it's fine.
Over to you.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you for inviting me to speak at this event. It's great to see so many different people and businesses involved in the Warrington Business Exchange and Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Yeah, as I said, sorry I don't have any slides because I'm a bit of a last minute addition, but I hope you don't mind me reading from my notes, because I tend to find these days if I don't write things down, I forget them. So I'm Cheryl Higgins, and I'm the Facilities Manager from the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority based in Warrington, and I oversee 5 offices where people from the NDA reside, and our offices are in Warrington, Cumbria, London, Dounreay and Harwell. I'm also the Women in Nuclear Northwest social media lead. I took over the Facilities Manager role in November 19. So as you can imagine, I had to adapt and step up to the plate pretty quickly when COVID-19 hit, which definitely pulled on my experience because I was previously a facilities and contract manager on a nuclear site. So here's our story about how COVID affected our offices and what we put in place to make them safe. When we started to hear the news about COVID, our team, which comprises of a director of corporate centre, myself and an advisor, we quickly started to plan and put things in place as we had a feeling it was going to be unprecedented and an evolving situation. From mid-March, the whole workforce was advised to work from home where possible, and with the help of IT, people were provided with equipment to help them carry on doing their role from home, and this also enabled us moving to agile, moving on to agile working for another level for the NDA. We did have some cases of people that couldn't work from home for reasons such as social interaction, for mental health, and people requiring specialist IT equipment. And it was all managed on a case-by-case basis by a line manager approval. We also put a DSE process in place for people who required more specialist equipment, for things like high back chairs and rise and fall desks, and where people were required to fill out an online assessment and request such items. The facilities team then set about organising and putting into place how the offices will be made safe, but we also had to ensure that we were always following the latest government guidance. We ordered signage from our supply chain along with antibacterial wipes, individual hand gels, face covering gloves, even some fancy no hands door openers, and even sanitation stations. We added double amount of hand gel dispensers on the walls throughout the buildings and stopped using hand dryers and dishwashers, but managed to keep our kitchens open with an additional wipe in, wipe out system. We then collaboratively worked with the health and safety team and FM contract team, and this included a lot of sticker work on our hands and knees. And so, but we set up the offices so we could always maintain a 2 metre distance, whether that be in the desk area, the meeting area, or the kitchens and toilets. We currently have approximately 1/3 of the office in use, so it's 100 desks down to 30. We also reconfigured our meeting rooms and managed to further increase the capacity by allocating seating around the edges of the rooms. But all seating has signage on it saying, "Sit on me, but do not move me." And so far nobody has, so that's quite a result. The 2 meters was all set up so people are not required to wear a face covering in the office, but they can do if they want to because they are available. We did consider going down the 1 metre route, but took the decision to stick with 2 metres, but we would look at that again if the offices get busier. We also implemented one-way systems and passing points where one-way was not possible. To accompany the new ways of working with the help of our communications team, we also produced posters, videos and training packs, and everybody had to complete these before they attended the offices. Our offices were reopened mid-July, and we initially saw quite a lot of people because they wanted to meet the new teams, because during the summer we had a lot of new starters. So to add to this, we implemented a buddy system, so no new starter went into the office for the first time alone. The numbers have now dwindled, mainly due to the tiered system and lockdown, and we're not sure when we'll get back to normal and what the new normal will ever be. Throughout the whole pandemic, we have manually tracked and traced everybody who's been in our offices, and we also have added a desk booking system. So all desks and meeting rooms are managed by a separate booking team, and all requests require a line manager approval. We implemented a reactive cleaning team on top of our standard cleaning, which include enhanced touchpoint cleaning and 24-hour COVID clean team if required. And we also came up with the idea of people picking up a pre-made tall sign when they enter the office and placing it on the desk they've booked, so the cleaners knew exactly which desk would be used on any given day. We even looked at our car parks and requested that people park in every other space. That was to further limit interaction between people. In September, we managed to bring back our catering service online at Warrington and Cumbria with a limited takeaway service to try and help our supply chain and with people coming back to work. And everybody who uses service must wear a face mask and must track and trace with a government QR code. This situation has made us realise that offices may never be used in the same way again. And we're currently looking at making our offices more collaborative. So instead of, like Simon mentioned, instead of just banks of desks, make it more collaborative, because it's been proven that our people can work comfortably from home. At the NDA, we always maintain like the common sense and trust approach. And I think it served us well because we've had some really great feedback on our offices. So in summary, the ongoing pandemic has certainly been unprecedented and a very busy time for our team, but it's also been enjoyable and given us lots of learning from experience, but we are seriously hoping there will not be a next time. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Cheryl. Quick question for me, because within the nuclear sector, there are so many different partners that get together, all that collaborative working, as you're saying. So do you find that everybody that you work with and speak to, they are equally on top of their game and willing to get together and come up with the right solution for that, for them to get back together?
There's the director I've mentioned, they have a weekly COVID team within our group of subsidiaries, and they're basically on the similar lines, but they had like for instance Sellafield had a lot more technical issues than us. I mean, there was a lot of people that had a lot of specialist equipment, so they had to have more people in the offices than we did, but they do speak on a weekly basis and talk about all our learning and learn from each other. So, and actually based in Hinton House, so and 90% of Hinton House is Sellafield, and I also have a weekly meeting with them about what they've put in place and what we've put in place, and we share the catering service in Hinton is a shared service, but it's managed by me, so I've had to speak about that, you know, constantly about the queue. I mean, and to be honest, the QR code, because it's a takeaway service, we weren't initially, you didn't need to do the QR code, but actually Sellafield said we'd prefer it if you did do the QR code, so that's why we put that in place. So yeah, we'd definitely say we're all working. I think because it happened so quickly at the start, it was all a bit panic, but then we all got set up and we got the weekly meetings, and yeah, we all come together.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I've been in a few buildings over the last few months, and they've all got, I've got to say, quite stringent and impressive regimes in place. I will mention the outset because I forgot to mention them earlier when I mentioned Jane and Sylvie, so Siobhan is on the call. So yeah, some of these places have got some really good systems. I also went to see a chamber member yesterday, which is at Jane K. Ross, just off Winnick Road, and Chris is on the call, because they clearly look at health and safety. I'm sure we've got other health and safety providers on this as well, but they've got this clever technology which cleans the air in the room, a bit like a dehumidifier. So we'll probably share information on that product on in one of our newsletters. If not, we can give Chris's contact details later on. But again, anybody on the call who, if they feel they've got something that makes it that bit more secure, because I always say to people, we're not making it safe, we're making it safer, because there's no 100% guarantee, and that's equally when you walk around the town centre. I did not quite fall out with my council colleagues, but I kept saying, tell them that it's safer, not safe, but just anything that gets towards that being safer is worthwhile. So yeah, this is what this call is all about. People come together, sharing ideas, sharing technology. So let's continue doing so. Jackie, I can't see any more questions.
I've got a question from Kirsty.
Oh yeah.
Do the stats mainly comprise private rental units, or does co-working fit into them, Simon? She'd be interested in any additional stats on this market, as well as Warrington sites like the Outset, UBC, Dallon Portal, Opus, who offer co-working. Kirsty is working in Lynn with a centre offering only co-working. It's repurposing of a council asset library, but due to co-sharing format, Kirsty is currently redoing their business plan and renegotiating terms. So insights and market feedback would be very valuable.
Yeah, sure. I'll get in touch with her. The stats that were presented today were based on conventional space, not service space or co-working space, but we do have data on that, and I'm happy to help out. So I'll get in touch.
Kirsty's mentioned that technology at Mottram Hotel. So this is where it's interesting with all the bits of Chamber, Business Exchange, Warrington and Co come together, because Angela Hankey, who I think is on the call as well, we're talking to a company who are using US technology. They're going to be building these walk-through booths in Warrington, and they've also got the spray as well. So yeah, we're supporting them with recruitment. So that should be going live in the next few months. So it'd be nice to get some pilots up and running in the town, keeping it local. Jackie, can you see anything else? I can't see anything else on there before we move on.
Let's just have a look. Jane, UBC offices have been fully open for customers. So there's details on there about the UBC. And that's it.
Brilliant, thank you. You keep an eye on that, because
no questions.
I can't do more than one thing at once. Back in Angela will tell you. Right, okay. And again, it's another easy link into the HR angle, because think back to when I first worked for the Northwest Development Agency, and I went from a very strict 9-to-5 manufacturing environment to then having remote working and home working back in 2003. And it took a while to get used to it. So I'm not saying that I was playing on the PlayStation and watching Jeremy Kyle 24/7, but there is a danger that people took too long and struggled to get into that culture. So clearly the HR angle is important. It's you've got people's well-being to look after. You've also got the monitoring as well, because we do want people to be efficient and effective. So Krystyna's day job, I'm just going to check, is Inspire Excellence. So Krystyna, have you got any slides for us, or are you just going to talk?
I do, so apologies. So I am going to find my slides and share my screen. So
Very much.
bear with me one sec. So can you all see that okay?
Yep, got that. Thank you.
Cool. Real. Okay, so yeah, easy segue for talking about this sort of stuff, really. And I'm just gonna get it going. There we go. So yeah, just a little bit about me to start with then. So I'm Krystyna. I've been in HR and training and coaching for some 20 plus years now. And I was a HR director of a big global organisation, 40,000 people, and I looked after the UK and Europe before I decided to kind of go on my own about 3 years ago now. So I've had my own consultancy for about 3 years, and my main work falls into the HR consultancy, and then coaching and training is the main things that I do. Background, got a big sort of learning development background, obviously fellow of the CIPD, so I've got my CIPD qualifications, coaching and mentoring, psychology, and a whole host of other things as well. So today, yeah, you know, like this year has been, you know, really up and down for everybody, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about working from home. So we've covered that a little bit already. I'm going to talk to you about motivation and some success strategies and feeling good, because, you know, we're going to go into next year with things still being up in the air and we don't know what we're doing. So the more we can sort of have our coping mechanisms and understand our behaviours and skills, then the sort of more prepared we will be for all the uncertainty that's still to come. So I'm going to apologise now because I'm going to talk quite fast because I've got so much I wanted to give you, and I'm going to shoehorn as much as I can into the sort of time that I've got. So if anyone wants any further information, because we are going to be skimming the surface with some of it, then please do get in touch because I'm happy to talk to you about it or give you more information and all the rest of it. So with that, let's get going. So recent Salesforce survey said over 75% of people this year have COVID has negatively impacted their habits, routines, structures. We know that this year has been a year of real change for everybody, personally, professionally. You know, we've all had to get used to new ways of working and new ways of doing things. Now, you know, some people sort of feel like, oh, some people can cope with change a lot better than others. And that is true that some people are quite adaptable to change a little bit better. But as humans in general, we don't like change. You know, our bodies are actually physically and physiology, you know, from a physiological point of view, set up to keep the norm, if you like. We like to be in a neutral state, which is called homeostasis. And homeostasis is when we're in a plateau state. So our hormones are regulated, our body temperature is regulated, and we like our comfort zone. So that's you know, where our bodies and where our minds like to be. Now, when we have a year like this year, you know, we have all this uncertainty, and humans don't like uncertainty, and we fear the new, we fear the unknown, and that's where we start to sort of become unraveled if we haven't got those strategies to help us. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, but we're also going to look at what the opportunities change presents, because it's not always a negative thing. Like, we know that, you know, there's some businesses that have suffered really badly this year, but we also know that particularly ones that are more agile and have been able to take their businesses online, for example, have actually done pretty well. So that, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. There have been some sectors and there have been some businesses that have actually had a really good year this year. And I think we need to remember that in sort of the context of what's going on. So very quickly, so we talked from working from home, and Cheryl very kindly shared what they're doing within her company, and you know, it's the same thing within a lot of businesses. So, you know, as a business, you're having to do all the 2 meter or 1 meter spacing. You know, whenever you go into shops now, you quite often have one-way systems and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's more anti-back around, you know, you've got your face masks and all that kind of thing. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit more from a sort of manager employee point of view. So from my clients and, you know, from people that have approached me, one of the big things that's really, really important is to have good relationships within your teams. And the reason for that is not just from a sort of communication, you know, sort of point of view in terms of getting the work done, but also being flexible with people, particularly earlier in the year when people were homeschooling and, you know, and trying to sort of manage that challenge. you know, the whole 9 till 5 model, which, you know, dates back to the industrial age. So, you know, there's loads of questions around anyway, whether that model actually fits, you know, sort of working today. And I think this year definitely been a good test to say that actually a lot of businesses have been able to sort of manage with their home working, and actually it's been good for some businesses as well. But I think it's really important to have that relationship. So a lot of the things that, you know, sort of the problems that have sort of come up to me is where perhaps employees feel like, oh, you know, God, if I'm not sat at my desk 9 till 5, my manager's going to think that I'm not working. Or, you know, if I've got to go and homeschool the kids for an hour, then, you know, I'm going to be seen like I'm not, you know, sort of doing what I should be doing. Or if I go for a walk at lunch and my manager calls, you know, that's going to be seen to be not acceptable. So it's really important to have those strong boundaries in place. And as a manager, you need to be telling your people, you know, if you have got direct reports, what's acceptable, what's not, you know. And actually, work should be more about sort of, you know, you should be viewing the work more about the output than the time that they're sat at their desk. So if they've got a particular workload that they need to achieve, it's about achieving that workload and not the amount of time that they're actually sat at the desk. And I think that flexibility is really, really key. So some people might find it much better to get up really early before the kids get up, for example, do a couple of hours, then have a couple of hours off whilst they're sorting out school runs and breakfast and all the rest of it, and then come back online. And similarly, you know, some people, like I tend to do quite a lot of work, particularly pieces of work that I need to concentrate on in the evening where I'm not going to get interrupted. And I quite like working in the evening. So again, you know, as long as they're doing the work, and obviously if people need to be available for answering phones and stuff in key hours, whatever, you know, all these things are considerations. But being flexible where possible is really important. And again, by doing that, you'll avoid, hopefully, burnout. And the other thing is obviously we need to consider Zoom fatigue. So at the beginning, everyone was like, yes, let's do Zoom quizzes. And now I think if you mention a quiz to people, people are just like, oh, God, not another one. So it's about keeping things as fresh as possible, which is really difficult to do when everybody is remote. And, you know, certainly in the HR forums that I'm a part of, you know, people are always trying to come up with new ways like, you know, Zoom bingo or things that are, you know, just a little bit away from the normal question and answer Zoom quiz, which I think everybody's a little bit fed up now of. The other thing is set boundaries. So, you know, again, you know, I've always kind of done a lot of work at night, but I've always made it very clear to my teams when I was a HR director and all the rest of it, that, you know, if I send emails at night, I don't expect an answer till the next morning in working hours. It's just my time that I do my stuff. So again, if you're a manager that does tend to send out of hours sort of emails, make sure that that knowledge is kind of passed on so people know what the expectations are. They know that, you know, that when they're expected to respond to things, when not, how flexible they can be, because all of that, one, builds trust as long as they are performing, and two, also just means that they're a bit more relaxed and they don't feel so uptight in a time that everybody already feels a little bit on the edge. So one of the things that's just so important is communication. So, you know, I've been in HR, like I say, over 20 years now, and most things that happen where you get big ER issues where it's not obviously someone doing something really naughty is generally a breakdown in communication or a breakdown in sort of understanding each other or communication styles that just don't match. So it's about, you know, communicating with you guys and really understanding them. Also, you know, when you're in the office and you can watch people, you can quite often see when someone's a bit off or not acting in their normal way. So again, that communication is really important if we're going to pick up on people that are really struggling, for example, and who are not potentially coming forward to say it. And again, that can be sometimes quite hard to be picking up in a Zoom call. So again, you know, if you've got smaller teams, then the more you can do sort of one-to-one calls to see how people are doing, checking in, all that sort of stuff is really important. The other side of working from home is if you're actually working from home, just check out your physical space, your working space. Now, you know, not everybody's lucky enough to have an office at home, you know, there's a lot of people having to do it on the kitchen table, which is, you know, quite hard. And I sort of, my hat's off to anybody who does that, because I find it hard enough working in an office and stuff with a dog like trying to taps the door every time she knows you're in here. But you know, it is quite challenging. But you know, they do say sort of you know, tidy space, tidy mind, all that sort of stuff. So make sure, you know, things like you keep clutter to a minimum, things are tidy, introduce things like plants, especially ones that sort of regenerate the oxygen, try and be near a window so you're getting some natural light. If you want to take it to the extreme, you know, you can look at like colours and paint and stuff, like different colours, you know, evoke different emotions, and you don't want every wall painted black, for example. That's quite insular. So you know, the lighter the space is, the more calm it is, you know, all those things are sort of conducive to productive working. Take breaks, something that I'm not always very good at if I'm busy. But again, you know, just that 10 minutes away from your desk, you know, shake it off, go for a quick walk, all those types of things really do make a difference to our mental health and also to our productivity as well. You know, even if we just whip the dog down the canal for 10 minutes at lunchtime, you do feel a bit more invigorated when you come back and sit at your desk. And I've put it again because it's just so important there, but really communicate. So communicate, communicate, communicate. And like I say, I'm really sorry because I am whizzing through this. So next up, we're going to have a little talk about mindset because it is just so important. Your mindset is everything. Your mindset is going to be what takes you to where you want to go. Your mindset is also going to be what holds you back if you are not getting to where you want to go. So it's really important that we choose a mindset, and it is a choice that keeps us positive and focused. You know, and it's all that, you know, are you a cup half full or a cup half empty type of person? You know, if something goes wrong, do you kind of get all overwhelmed and anxious and kind of fall apart, or do you kind of like sort of, you know, think, right, okay, let's go with it, let's learn from this, let's do this, you know, I just need to get over this challenge and then it'll be okay. So, you know, things that come up, how do you deal with them? And certainly, you know, with some of my coaching clients, and they can come to me quite overwhelmed and things that we look at are things that they can put in place to train them to become more resilient and to choose a better mindset and to try and be in a more positive place for longer, so that they can actually feel like they're progressing and moving forward and things like that. And one of the things that you can do really easily, and again, when I train people, a lot of this stuff that I talk about and we work through with clients is not super sexy, it's not like earth-shattering stuff, it's really simple, easy stuff that most of us really know already, but it's the stuff that's really easy to do, but it's also the stuff that's really easy not to do, or really easy to think, oh, I can't be bothered today, or oh, I've done it for a week and it hasn't worked, you know. So, you know, these things, and if you want a good book to read, I always say this, I should get commission off this book really, but there's a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and he talks about like incremental baby steps. And, you know, you don't always feel like you're progressing at the time, but it's then 6 months later or a year later when you look back and you can actually see how far you come. And the other thing he talks about is like, if you imagine one of those old mill wheels, the big iron ones, and, you know, it's not the first push, the second push, it might be the 100th push or the 150th push where it starts to move, and then it starts to move on its own and gain momentum. And, you know, sometimes when we're working towards things, you know, it doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere, or it feels like we take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and, you know, but it's just about keep going. So resilience is just as important as mindset, and that's definitely something that I really try and hammer home to people and people I work with. One of the things you can really do to help yourselves is creating daily rituals and routine. So as humans, just like, you know, our bodies are set up to be in neutral, so our homeostasis, humans love routine. You know, in the norm, there might be the odd cases that don't and like the challenge of different things all the time, but most of us like routine. So you've only got to look at people that, for instance, that retire and then they feel really lost because they've lost that social structure, they've lost their purpose sometimes. You know, and there's a lot of people who retire who really struggle and who, you know, may even very sadly pass away because they've lost that routine, they've lost that structure. So what we need to do, if we're not doing so well, is create daily rituals and routine that really are going to set us up for success. So, you know, things like try and limit your exposure to negative influences. So even watching the news every day, reading newspapers, scrolling on social media, you know, a lot of it, or if you like, you know, if you're obsessed with Coronation Street or EastEnders, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to advise you to nail it, you know, knock it on the head or reduce it, because all of these things are based on drama and negative things. You know, if everybody got on in, you know, if everyone got on in Coronation Street all the time, then people would probably find it quite boring to watch. It's all the drama and all the, you know, people being nasty to each other and all the rest of it that, you know, sort of draws people in. So, you know, one really easy thing you can do is just notice what you're exposing yourself to, and try, if you are watching news all the time, watching all the soaps, scrolling through social media all the time, you know, maybe you'd like to try and replace that with some different things. So, you know, listen, you know, I'm going a bit woo here, but, you know, people will advocate listening to morning meditations, listening to really positive podcasts. You know, you've got some of the big coaches in America, Tony Robbins, Brendan Bouchard, some of these really, you know, really successful people, and they have amazing books, podcasts, audio books, all these things. You know, and some of them are free. You know, a lot of podcasts and stuff are obviously free, so you've got access to really positive content that's kind of going to feed your soul and get you into a positive state, especially first thing in the morning. Other things, exercising. You know, we all know that exercising releases endorphins in our brains and helps us, you know, kind of get going and get our energy going. So all of these things are things that you can do really easily, but, you know, you do have to do them. I advocate a framework that I kind of made up myself, which amused me, because we always think of something being CAC as being quite rubbish. But actually it's quite a positive thing. And when I work with my coaching clients, we use this system, and CAC stands for commitment, action and consistency. And no matter what you want to achieve, you kind of need those three pillars. You know, you need to be committed to change, whether, you know, it's a small change or a big change. You need to take action, because actually without any action, you know, you're not going to get anywhere fast. And you need to do things consistently. So again, if you start listening to morning meditations, you know, unless you're very lucky, you know, you're not going to see much change in the first few times that you do it. It's a period of time where these changes take effect, and you might not even notice it at the time. But when you look back, then you'll see how far you come. Moving on, be really clear about what you want. So whether it's a professional goal or a personal goal, or, you know, you're kind of fed up with the way things are, do you know what you want? And if you don't, you need to get really clear. You know, I get clients that sort of say, oh, you know, I kind of want to earn more money. Okay, well, that's great, but that's not very specific. So how much more money do you want to earn? You know, do you want to be on a 30 grand salary? Do you want to be on 60 grand salary? Do you want to be 100 grand salary? You know, what is it? Be really specific about what you want. And then it's so much easier to put a plan in place. So if you're not clear about what you want, and like I say, that could be personal, professional, you know, think about it and get really, really clear about what you want. And if you are clear about what you want, because again, I do get clients that are, but then they're not kind of doing anything to get there. So if you are clear, what are you doing to get to your goal? And if most of you are kind of business people on there, so you'll have heard of SMART goals, you know, specific, measurable. Are they achievable? Are they relevant? Are they time bound? And again, you know, as cheesy as that might be, it's quite a good framework to use when you sort of setting your goals, because, you know, okay, you want to earn, you know, 60 grand, 100 grand. So, you know, what time scale do you want to do that in? And you sort of, you know, go through all these steps, and then say, what steps do we need to put in place to get you to that? So another really key piece of advice when you're sort of doing things, and this is whether it's work things or personal goals, you know, break things down into small bite-sized chunks so that they feel achievable. You know, you've only got people, you know, like if you say you want to lose 3 stone in weight, that's quite a big goal, and it, you know, it's absolutely achievable, but it can feel quite overwhelming. So if you broke that down and said, right, okay, so I want to do it over X amount of time, so I actually only need to lose like a couple of pounds a fortnight or whatever it might be, then that feels much more achievable than a big massive goal of perhaps, you know, losing 3 stone. So the smaller bite-sized chunks that you can break things down into, the more likely you kind of going to be to get going with it, because it'll feel more achievable. And then when we're looking at the next stage is finding what works for you. So everybody is really, really different, and you'll hear lots and lots of different advice. And what I always say to people is that you really have to find what works for you. So, you know, you hear things about the 5 AM club and people who get up at 5 AM and they can do all this work, you know, before kind of the rest of the world wakes up. Now, that works for some people really well, but me personally can't think of anything worse than getting up at 5 AM every morning. You know, it's just not me at all. I'd much rather work late into the night than be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, because I know I'd be really tired the whole day. So you have to find what works for you. Excuse me. So routine, you know, get into some good routines and stick with it and try it for a few months and see what happens. Break things down, balance your work life, which is something most of us are not very good, but someone once, I think I'll come on to it in slightly in a minute actually, but someone said to me a little while ago, one of my coaches said, you know, how much time do you spend in joy? And it's not like joy as in like being ecstatic, but how much time do you spend in joy, playfulness, you know, just doing stuff for fun? And actually probably haven't much this year, because it's been so busy with everything with furlough and, you know, all the HR stuff and redundancies, unfortunately, and then coaching clients and, you know, setting other things up, that actually probably haven't spent anywhere near as much time as I would like doing the playful stuff. So when you sit and reassess you know, what you're doing from that kind of point of view, it can be quite interesting sometimes. So again, if you're kind of getting a little bit burnt out by work, just have a little assessment of yourself and see what areas of your life that you're kind of perhaps neglecting a little bit. And then really remember that Rome wasn't built in a day, which is, again, something I'm not always very good at, is having patience. But, you know, we do have to have patience sometimes, and, you know, things perhaps do take us longer than we like. You know, we all think that success is this straight line, where it's not. It's up and down and wiggly and back and forward. So again, that's where the resilience comes in. That's where the positive mindset comes in. And those things will really help you to keep going through the times that perhaps aren't quite as easy. So reminder, in terms of like implementing your success strategies to help you, limit your exposure to negative things. So we've talked about that already. We'll follow, watch, read things by inspirational people. So again, you know, if you're into sports, you might want to find some really inspirational sports people and follow their podcasts and things like that. Like I say, I quite like listening to some of the stuff by some of the big coaches, because that's always really useful from a business perspective as well as a personal one. And watch who you take advice from and listen to. So, you know, we take a lot of advice from our friends and our families and things like that, but they're not always, even though they might mean well, they don't know our businesses, they don't know, you know, our things in detail. And one of the things I was always told is never take advice from someone who's never been where you want to go. So again, you know, if you're somebody that's taking a lot of advice and, you know, perhaps feeling a bit miserable or it's not that kind of positive, you know, maybe you just want to look at who you're taking advice from and, you know, sort of reach out to different people. There's so many groups and forums. Now, one of the good things that's come from being online, there's so many different networking groups and forums on, you know, Facebook, LinkedIn, and then external ones, that there's always people in your sort of sphere of work that can help you. And then remember your commitment, action, and consistency. I'm just seeing how I'm doing for time. Okay. And then the other last sort of things is about feeling good. You know, so the more we feel, and again, it's not rocket science, is it? The more we feel good, the better we're going to be at our jobs, the better we're going to be in our relationships and in our personal and family life. You know, the more productive we're going to be. But we need to work from the inside out. So, you know, if you've got challenges, you know, and, you know, self-limiting beliefs and all that sort of stuff, then we need to work on those to be able to get to where we want to be. The other thing I always talk to people and clients about is about letting go of things that don't serve you anymore, like physically and mentally. So we all hold on to certain things, and sometimes it might be relationships that perhaps just not, you know, serving us well, whether that's families, partners, whatever. And I always remember I did a lot of EFT, which is a more therapeutic type of therapy. And the example that always stuck in my mind was the lady who trained us had worked with this lady for quite a long time, and she'd not been able to walk very well. I'm telling this story mega quick, so excuse my speed of speech. But she'd kind of got to the stage where she'd helped this lady get back on her feet. She was kind of walking, but she couldn't walk properly without a stick. And long story short, that when they did further sort of therapy and talking about it, she didn't actually want to fully let go of the illness, because her son, since she had been ill, had been coming around every week, had been getting her shopping, had been helping her and around the house and all that sort of stuff. And she didn't want to fully get better, because actually she thought that that would stop. And she only really got to that through the coaching, through the therapy and all the rest of it. So if things aren't the way that you want to be, just really have a look and see if there's any benefits to holding on to things. And if there are, then you need to address those potentially. And if there isn't, then, you know, some stuff, you know, you might just want to let go. And even simply just by cleaning your house out. So we've certainly had a declutter throughout the last few months, and we've cleaned out all the rubbish, and you feel so much better for having a good sort out. So even that, just physically getting rid of all the junk that you don't actually need anymore, kind of clears your mind and where you think about things as well. And then obviously it's all about education. So like you say, by looking at positive things, reading positive things, we can kind of bring our motivation levels and our feel-good factor up. So last few tips, plan, be organised, be intentional. You know, the more focused we are on something, you know, the easier it is just to get it done. Have open and honest conversations with your peers, with your managers, with your employees, because the more honest and more transparent you can be, the better relationships you will have, the more productive your employees will be. If you feel overwhelmed, with pieces of work, make sure you break it down into bite-sized chunks, because that will help you feel like you can achieve them. Review things regularly, and don't forget to reward yourself. And again, people aren't always very good at that. So, and especially women, actually. I did the Flexera Women's Summit keynote a few weeks ago. And, you know, it's interesting talking to those guys, but women in particular are not always very good at rewarding themselves, because we just kind of get on with things. So, you know, like I can just get on with all the household chores, and sorry boys, but, you know, like my partner will come and tell me that he's emptied the dishwasher, and I kind of feel like, oh, do you want a gold star, dear? That's something I do every day. So, you know, we don't give ourselves credit for all the work that we do sometimes. And I think it's really important to make sure that when we have achieved things, that you kind of reward yourself. Last few things, feel good, be in nature. We all know that, you know, walking in nature does our souls, the world of good. You know, it really does have an amazing effect on our physical and mental health. Look at your physical spaces, as we spoke about before. Set your boundaries in terms of, you know, in terms of out of hours calls and things like that, what's acceptable, what's not, and make that known. Ask yourselves how much time you're spending in joy or playfulness or having fun. You know, the fastest way to feel good is to have fun, and, you know, that brings our vibrations and our energy levels up. So, you know, whether it's with the dog or whatever you do to have fun, then go do that. And then don't forget to look after yourselves as well. So again, you have to find what works for you, but it might be a hot bath, it might be cooking, it might be reading, whatever you find that is a bit of a self-care thing for you. Don't forget to weave that into your time as well. This is all stuff we've already talked about. So again, you know, just make sure that you're being, I think the main thing is to be attentive to what's going on. So if you're feeling quite negative, really think about what's making you feel like that. Is that something you can let go of? Is that something you need to work on? You know, is that something that you need to speak to somebody about? And then, you know, like I say, where possible, to try and let go of the things that don't serve you. And I just wanted to put this slide up as the last sort of slide, because I just wanted to remind you really that this year, you know, we've all faced lots and lots of challenges. And like I said to you several times on this talk, it is about resilience. and keeping going sometimes. Now, these are just some of many people who were kind of told that they wouldn't amount to anything. You got Oprah Winfrey, who had a very abusive childhood, was fired from a TV network saying she wasn't fit to be on TV, and then obviously look what she's gone on to achieve. Michael Jordan was fired from his high school basketball team for not being good enough, and again, one of the sort of best NBA players ever. You've got Walt Disney, who was fired from a newspaper for having no imagination and not being very good, and then obviously he went on to create Disney. Henry Ford had 3 failed businesses before he succeeded with Ford businesses, and he was age 53 when he actually made it. And Marilyn Monroe, who again was told that she wasn't fit to be on screen and she'd never amount to anything, and she obviously proved them all wrong. So, if you are having times of trouble, just remember that it is about keeping going, and you'll get there in the end. So we're all different. Find what works with you. Be open, curious, and flexible. Practice resilience. Feel good, and work on your subconscious and limiting beliefs. And that's it from me, guys. So if you want to get in touch, I know I really whizzed through a lot of that and didn't go into a huge amount of detail. So if anyone wants to talk about it in more detail, I'd be happy to go through it with them.
Krystyna, thanks very much for that. Homeostasis, that's what I'm going to say to my wife this weekend when she's telling me to do the chores. It's in my DNA. I can't change. So that's the nugget for me. What I'll say is there's some really good chat going on from everybody. So have a look at that, and then any questions for Krystyna, just conscious of time, if you put them in there or she put contact details up, we'll do take advantage of the expertise that she's got, because it's really important that we look after our people clearly. We've covered people, we've spoken about the officers, we've spoken about the environment, the health and safety. I suppose the angle that we're missing is the technology. So we're not talking Big Brother, but clearly the technology does facilitate things. The phrase of the year is "you're on mute." Clearly, I'm going to have some t-shirts printed and make 1 million on that. So very important that we've embraced the technology and we get it right. So the wisest man in IT, I'm really sorry, I couldn't resist it, it's just too obvious. Mark Wiseman from YouCloud, he's going to finish off the session today by covering technology. Mark, have you got some slides?
I've got a slide. Yeah, I have. How am I doing for time? What do you want me to do in terms of time?
Jackie's the boss on time. I'd say you've got about 10 minutes.
Cool. Okay. It takes me about 8 minutes to figure out how to share the slides, so that's a good start.
But you're the technology guy.
Are we share screen? Is my screen sharing?
There'll be a bit of a lag, Mark, won't there, on this?
Not yet.
Come on then, Zoom.
Do you subscribe to Zoom? Because I think, is it a bit like Teams where you've got to subscribe before it lets you do it? No,
it's not. You should be able to share it, Mark.
All right, come on then. It's not, my computer's not letting me. It doesn't want to play with Zoom. I'll tell you what, I will talk because it's actually picking up, and it's interesting talking about the COVID, how a lot of the things tie in together, to be honest. I mean, we're talking about what Simon talked about before and about the buildings and the office space and some of the chat as well. And it's really interesting looking at, okay, well, what does the future look like? We've talked about where we've got up to today, and what does the future look like? And likewise, from a wellbeing perspective, it's really interesting about, well, what's the effect of home working, and what's the effect of this crazy 2020? And a lot of that, it ties into the technology, and it ties into how businesses have used IT. So I'm just going to talk through quickly then, I think, as a kind of headline. I think the direction of travel for IT is, it just becomes more and more embracing for us. So, there's Amazon and Microsoft and lots of others, and they all play on their own. They don't play well with each other, but I think that will change over time as that becomes necessary. Things like, you might have heard terms like machine learning and artificial intelligence and so on. The amount of data that's been captured on us all, we've probably all seen statistics about it, and Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and one thing or another, but one way or another, your data about your behavior and what you look at and search for and do is being captured. It's very difficult to find a way out of it. And the more data that exists, it needs computers to be able to find, figure it out and trawl through the data. So that is just going to become more and more and more pervasive. Things like cloud gaming. So gaming, again, there are a couple of industries that are huge in terms of, in terms of cloud. Some of them are a little bit more straightforward than others. Gaming is a very big industry, and of course we've all seen the queues of people queuing up to buy Xboxes and PS5s and things. That I think increasingly will become a thing of the past. Buying boxes or hardware is what they call in IT. I think that will just become a thing of the past, and that will all just move into the cloud, and people will use games in the cloud. So, not about anybody else, but I'm going to say I'll be happy not to spend £500 on a box for one of the kids, but I'm sure they'll find a way of getting our money out of us somehow. Things like how, as computers move into the cloud and servers and everything, it just becomes the norm. We'll get to a point where people go, do you remember when we used to go to a shop and buy a box and that was your computer in it? That was crazy, wasn't it? I mean, that will be yesteryear what we're doing today. And I think, again, that's starting to happen more and more. And so these are, I guess, what you might call the meta trends. These are the big trends. It's, everything is moving into the cloud. And I guess in my business, in YouCloud Solutions, we are big believers that if you use technology properly, it gives you an advantage in your business. It helps you in your life. It makes things better. But what we often see is that they find IT inaccessible. It's all gobbledygook. People want to talk geek to them, and the shutters come off and it becomes really difficult. So certainly from our perspective, we're looking to kind of make it accessible, help businesses get the very best use of the latest technology and keeping it really simple. So I think, so what have we seen in terms of the, I guess, the overarching themes coming through COVID? So we've already talked about some of them, about working from home. It's become the norm. It had to become the norm because everybody was forced to do it. I guess the question is, are we doing it well? And are we doing it well? Well, typically we don't see people doing it brilliantly, but it falls into two camps. The two considerations I see is your business and your people. How is it affecting your business? Is it making your business more complicated? Is it making things more difficult to do? Is the technology working for you? Has it made your life more complicated, or has it made your life less complicated? And from a people perspective, Krystyna talked about it, Simon touched on it as well, but Krystyna talked about it quite a bit, and she's exactly right, of course. But what's the well-being effect of the technology of working from home? If you as a business have given your people, thrown tools at people, thrown cloud tools at people, you've kind of found a way to make it work, but actually you've made people's lives more complicated. You've made your business more complicated. And what we see on the effect of that is we see people getting frustrated. We see people not being able to share stuff on Zoom, for instance, but we see people getting frustrated. We see people, kind of getting burnt out. The well-being effect on them is increasingly damaging over 2020. It's been well documented about the effect of that. And some of that is about how people have used technology. They've kind of found a way to make it work, but it's not really helping their people. It's just solved a problem in the immediacy. What we also see is people have found a way. Business owners are pragmatic people who solve problems. That's how they've grown their business. And they've done exactly the same this year. But what's happened is you've solved lots of isolated problems, and you end up with lots of tools that are all doing the same thing. I'm going to just go through a very quick story in a minute of a real life example that we've dealt with recently. So I guess I'm going to shoot through this, but this is, well, what do we do about that then? So, what is the answer? What do we do? And certainly from my perspective, when we talk to customers about how do we help, it's very much about have a plan. In your business, you would never if you're trying to grow your business or whatever, you would never just start having a go at things. You'd never just go, well, let's try and sell to this market. Let's try and sell this stuff. You'd never do it. You'd have a plan about what your strategy was. And you need to have a plan for your technology. It underpins everything in your business. It's how your people engage with you. It's how you set some of your culture in your business. Your culture is enabled by the technology you provide your team. So, having a proper plan around, okay, what's got you here won't get you there. So what's got you here in terms of just getting things up and running using Zoom, using Teams, that's fine. But what is your plan for your business? So we think that's really important. Have a plan. Having a plan, typically we then it helps with your business. So removes duplication, saves you cost. If you remove duplication, it saves you cost. But almost more importantly than that, it simplifies your life. So you've not got 4 different applications that do the same thing. You're not searching for files. I can't remember whether I've put it on Dropbox or on my computer or on OneDrive or whatever. It simplifies your life, and by simplifying your life, you become more efficient and you typically save cost in your business. So I am going to keep this kind of quite brief, and I'm just going to tell a quick story about a customer that we helped a couple of months ago, and for no good reason. That the story really illustrates a real life example of something that exemplifies what we just talked about. So we spoke to the customer. They asked us to help them. They were aware they got into a bit of a pickle, and I'm just going to kind of step through this on the slide. It explains that they were doing conference calls by Zoom. That's fine. We all use Zoom. We use Zoom as well. They were doing them by Teams, and they were using GoToMeeting. Okay, so there's 3 to start with. They also were collaborating with their teams using Teams because they had Office. They were using Slack and email and WhatsApp. Okay, this is now, I don't quite know where I'm going for my updates, but that's also confusing. They had a file server in the office for storing files, but they also put stuff on OneDrive sometimes. And then some of their teams started to use Dropbox because that was easier. Okay, so now we've got 2 cloud solutions and we've got a file server. And then they also had, from an email perspective, the directors had Office, so they were using Outlook, but then everybody else was using Gmail, except for the directors had also got a couple of Gmail accounts that they used as well. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I think we can definitely help you with this. And again, to cut a long story short, it was really about what's important for your business. What is your plan for your business, not your IT, your business, right? What's the best IT and the best solution for that? Keep it as simple as you possibly can. Help share with your teams and engage with your teams about what platforms you use for what systems you use for what, where you store things, how you share things. And by getting the IT to work for you and simplifying it, we found that their engagement went up, their people knew exactly where to go when they wanted information, which meant their business was more efficient. They reduced their cost significantly. It was about 35% cost reduction. And everybody was just knew exactly how to work in the business. So I guess it's a really common story that we see. That's a bit of an extreme example, but I think I guess from a technology perspective, what's got you here won't get you there. And it is really, think about, I've solved loads of problems in COVID, but is this going to work long term? What's the effect on my people? Do my teams know, where to go for what, and how complicated or simple have I made my business? And I think that would be my takeaway, would be have a look at, what is your plan? Does your IT work for you? And make sure that you're making best use of the latest technology.
Mark, thanks very much for that. Very insightful as ever. Just one quick question from me. Again, just conscious that it's nearly the weekend. Quick question on broadband speeds. Now, I know you'll answer with it's to do with bandwidth, but just as a general guide, what's a typical minimum speed you need for all this technology? Because in Warrington, when it comes to super fast broadband, it's pretty good. It's about 98% coverage, which I think is 50 to 100 meg. The ultra fast, I think that's where we do struggle a little bit, and full fiber network. So all these technologies, quick answer, what's the minimum speed that you need?
Quick answer is, even if you've got 8 meg, which is a typical broadband line, 8 meg, that will work fine. that works fine. Most people, you know, because they use a consumer line, even in the businesses, they use a fibre line. They've got a fibre line, it's 40 meg, absolutely fine. We'd be absolutely fine with that. So most consumer lines now, even businesses use consumer lines, and they will work fine. Once you get into, you know, into bigger businesses and so on, then you need to make sure it supports what you want to do. But yeah, a normal consumer fibre line would work brilliantly.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And there's a strong endorsement there from Kirsty on the chat of your services, so thanks very much. I'm going to leave it there. Again, just thinking about the time, just really want to thank everybody, particularly the presenters, Simon, Cheryl, Krystyna and Mark, and everybody for attending today, because it's so important that we get together. And it's not just the chamber, it's not just the business exchange. I noticed Kirsty, yeah, I mentioned Kirsty from Colony. I apologise to other people who are on running networks. It's just really important that we do continue to support each other for when we get to the other side, when we can meet face to face. So do have a look at the calendar of events on the Business Exchange, which captures what everybody's up to, not just ourselves. Jackie, thanks for putting this morning together.
Can I just do a quick photo?
Of course you can.
Can I just do a quick photograph,
It's not like
please?
you to want a photo, Jackie, and get it on social media.
Smile, everyone.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if anybody needs anything, do get in touch with anybody who's been on the call. As I say, some really great technologies for us all to share, and we will get through this. Let's just look after each other. And if you can have a nice weekend, if there's anything to do, if you can find something to do, then please do it.